Hey man,
Yo, yo, how you doing, dude?
great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good myself. Doing good.
Uh, nice, nice. How's the coronavirus situation there?
Oh, dude, everyone's paranoid. Everyone's being extra, extra paranoid, and everyone's freaking out that their lifestyle is now turning into what mine is like every day, where it's like social distancing. Don't be near anybody ever.
Yeah, yeah. It's the same here. The whole country is under lockdown.
Yeah, that's what just happened to me like 3 days ago. On like Thursday, we went on lockdown. So yep,
Yeah, but I guess with your kind of job, you're not going out too much, so
exactly.
I guess it's okay.
For like the last 5 years, I've been leaving my house once a week to go to the store, so it's just normal.
Yeah, it's normal. And I guess more people will start watching streams now, right now, so it's good for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of. Yeah. Okay, so what should I do?
Are you on? All your replays are being played on the European server, right? Or all your games?
Y- Yep,
Okay, I'm
right
coming.
there.
I'm coming over to Europe, and I can't remember if we added each other or not. We might have.
I believe yes.
Okay,
Yep. But I don't know which account
okay, I got you right here.
I added. Yeah,
All right, so
here it is.
I'll make you. Er, there we go. Just kidding. There's someone else I invited. Okay, I'm gonna make you leader. And then you can host the replay, and then in the replay, just make sure you make me the lobby host before we start, and we'll get into it.
Okay.
So, since we last talked, how have things been going for you?
Uh, we last talked about ZVT, so it improved a lot. Now it's time for ZvZ.
Yeah.
Actually, it was my worst match, but last week I found a tutorial on on Reddit, so it improved a lot. But still, I want to have a solid game plan because I'm not quite sure how to react to things.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's do ZvZ today.
Okay.
Promote lobby host, right?
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And I should now start watching the stream, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Just mute it for yourself, so and you'll just hear the Discord call because you're just gonna hear an echo otherwise.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So definitely we'll talk about your style of choice of whatever you want to do here in ZvZ. I'll try and help you make it better because you have some limited options. I'll say like you have like Lingbane openers, obviously, or like Roach openers. Those are going to be what you're going to do every time. So I'll definitely see what you're going for and try to help you make it a better way to go about it. And also, we'll talk about how your build should be able to react to things. And yeah, Roach builds don't really.
Yeah,
Or go ahead. What are you going to say?
I was going to say that I tried Roach builds, but it failed miserably, so I'm trying Bane. I'm opening with hatch first, 17
Sure.
hatch, 18 gas, 16, 17 pool, I believe, and then speed of the Zerglings, and then Baneling Nest. That's my initial build, and I try to react and see whether the opponent is trying to flood me with links or some other all-in.
Okay. So right off the bat, I'm gonna say in ZvZ, this is the most important. It's like a little important in ZvP. It's not important at all in ZvT, but it's so important in Zerg versus Zerg because and what it is you need to go 16 hatch, not 17 hatch. And the reason why this is important, okay, is because
Okay.
if you build a hatchery at 17 and your opponent 12 pulls you, like they basically go any type of pool before expansion, and the earlier the pool is, the more time they have to hit your hatchery before it can be defended. And the severe thing that is really important here is if it's a 12 pool and they get lings out as fast as possible, they can smack your hatchery for like an extra, it's like 6 seconds or like 7 seconds, because or more like it's like 5 or 6 seconds. But when your hatchery is under construction, it has no armor. And when your hatchery is completed, and it's actually like a hatchery that starts spawning larvae, it actually has armor. So the lings are smacking your hatchery so much fucking harder when it has no armor. It's 20% more damage. And your hatchery is going to be so much harder to defend. And it's most likely going to die a lot more when you get pressured. And you're going to be like, oh, I lost my natural again. I lost my natural
Exactly
again.
that happened this game.
Yeah. So you need to stop going
Yeah.
17 hatch. You need to go 16 hatch because It's just so much stronger against early pools.
Okay, but the build is the same afterwards,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. It could be 16, 18, 17. That's all. That would be fine.
Okay.
It's just that hatchery going down, the like literally like the 5 or 6 second difference is gonna be like we'll see it probably. We'll see lings smacking your hatchery while it's under construction still in the bubble. Uh, this wasn't actually a 12 pool though, so there's a chance it might finish right before. But I'll give you another tip too, and another idea on how to handle this. But yeah, no, it's definitely huge. Getting the early hatchery because it also gives you faster larva too. Uh, Another thing though, like you just saw lings crossing. Okay, so we're gonna talk about this really fast. When you're when
I
you're
believe I didn't see them
okay,
right here.
yeah, yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. But when you are in ZvZ, this is something you should always do for yourself. Uh, I'm gonna quickly. We're at 143. We'll get back there really fast. I just want to see your Overlord pathing really quickly, and I want to see where you're clicking with it. And I can't really. Okay, I see. So you're clicking right here on the screen. You're clicking right there. You literally clicked right there to move your Overlord. You like right clicked it, and then you did a shift command right after. So it's right in front of his natural, at your like shift rally point. Honestly, every single time, what you should do is this is the trick. Okay, here's the trick. That's how you break ZvZ. And there's very few maps that don't follow this rule. And it's if it is a map that works like this, the map example of this would be like there's actually two of them surprisingly in the current map pool. One is Golden Wall, and the other one is Industry and Purity or Purity and Industry, however you say it. Because those maps have these weird naturals that have like this like way outer curve that goes around the map and then it comes back. But on standard maps like this map is super standard. If you just right click the top of their ramp right here, like in the main base, you click the very top of the ramp to move your Overlord. You're still going to get to where you want to go here with your, with seeing that they have an expansion. And you're also going to get to see your Overlord's going to be going the most optimal path of scouting where it's going to give you the revelation of the middle of the map. So you can see lings crossing all the time. And again, like Golden Wall and Purity Industry are the two exceptions of that in this current map pool because of the way that they're designed. So you'd have
They are very weird.
yeah, exactly. They're not standard maps.
How to approach them
So
with the Overlord.
those maps you would want to send your first Overlord as quickly as you could to his natural. But what's going to happen is your Overlord's going to fly through like open airspace that's not going to see shit, or it's going to fly through an area that can't be scouted. So your second Overlord would go up and it would go instead like to the rally point of where the lings would come. So you would on those maps you would see it later, but you would still be able to see it before it gets to your base. Those maps would be harder to deal with it on because it's not as standard. But here's the huge thing, okay? So if you move your Overlord to the top of his ramp, and then you move it back to like you can literally shift rally where you could like go move there, move back here. Or if you're like, okay, fuck, I don't want to lose my Overlord, and there's a chance it could happen, move it into the same direction of where it is from your base. So if I'm telling you on the screen right now, because you're probably looking at the stream, the top of his ramp, if that's where I tell you to move it, and you're like, okay, I'm afraid of getting killed by a queen, what you could do instead is you could go a little bit backwards to where towards your base, where if you were to think about an imaginary line from where your Overlord is right now to where this green box is on the top of his ramp, you can just go like this. How about instead of moving it here, you move it like right here, or move it like right there. You know what I mean? So you could like move it back just a tad, and then you could just see the edge of his expansion here, and then move it back, kind of like what you did here, but it would be here instead. It's kind of like how you moved it, but it's just closer to his ramp, and then you move it back with the shift command. And that would be totally fine. It's just it lines your Overlord up so well with vision, and when that happens, we'll now speed it up back to where we just were. You'll see lings all the time crossing the map unless he physically hides them. And if he and I'll explain this logic in a second. It's pretty important. So now even though you didn't move your Overlord in the right spot exactly, you still barely caught the lings crossing. And if your Overlord was a bit more lined up, where it would be if it was going to the top of his ramp, instead of where your Overlord is right now, it would probably be like right there. Just to the left of where it is, which is why I say it's so good at catching lings crossing. you would easily have seen or spotted that without having like a split second to catch it. And what now is important, okay? This is the huge thing. I'm gonna blow your mind right now. Hopefully, in Zerg versus Zerg, you do not want to make anything with your larva once you're at 19 supply, which is 3 drones on gas and 16 on mineral line. Do not spend any more larva until 2 minutes. And the reason why this is huge is because you will not larva cap until about 2:05. So you'll have plenty of time to make a larva. And you will also not supply block when you're ready to make 2 queens, because this overlord is going to finish either way before you supply block if you wait until 2 minutes or if you build it now, because the natural finishes and gives you more supply as well. And what this does for you, why this is so important, is because if you see lings crossing on the map, by you'll always see a 12 pool at around 132 to 135, and you will always see a 1312, which is like a baneling or a speedling follow-up. You'll always see a gas version of an early ling attack between 130, like right around 140 to like 145, like somewhere in that range of time. Because it's just because like a 13 pool, like a 1312 versus a 12 pool, the 1312 is a little bit slower, but it's still pretty fast. So basically, in the range of 130 to like 2 minutes, you will see some variation of Zergling coming out of his base, towards yours, and that allows you to go, oh, you know what? I'm not going to build an Overlord. Instead, I'm just going to make Zerglings, because the like I said before, the natural gives you supply, and having the difference of having like only a couple lings when he shows up at your hatchery to smack it, or having 8 lings immediately, because what would happen is your pool finishes, your natural finishes at the same time, and then your main just now gets 3 larvae, and you make all 4 of those larvae into Zerglings. So now you're instantly making 8 Zerglings to defend yourself, which is huge at being able to actually guard your natural.
So I'm not losing anything if I
No,
wait for the overlord.
you are not. Nope.
Okay. Okay.
And the last thing that I didn't go over, this is like a really basic concept, but it's super technical how we're breaking it down. Just making sure you understand every aspect of it. The last thing that could happen is you might not, and this is why 2 minutes is important. You might not see lings at the 130 to 135 block, which is a 12 pool. You might not see lings at the 140 to 145 time block, which is a 1312. And then you might see only 2 lings coming out of his base at like 148 or like 150 or 155. You might just 2 are crossing, and what that tells you as well is there's a very high chance he actually told his first 6 lings to cross sideways across the map, and then go down and around, instead of just running straight through the overlord. So and because nobody's gonna have that lings out that fast if they're going for an expansion first, because as you notice, your pool is still not even going to be done for another almost 20 seconds, which means you're not even going to be able to start making lings until like 2:05 or 2 minutes to 2:05. That's when you start making lings if you go hatchery first. So if you see any fucking lings before 2 minutes, you know it's pool first. And then that tells you, okay, I could save the overlord, or save the larva for the overlord. Don't make that yet. Make lings instead, and then you'll be fine. You'll have 28 supply to work with when the hatchery finishes at your natural, because each hatchery when it finishes gives 6 supply, which is more than enough to make both your queens and all your lings.
Okay. What about the 15 hatch?
So if it's a 15 hatch, it really just depends on how early he sends his lings, and a 15 hatch, generally speaking, will not send. It doesn't have the ability to send lings this fast. A 15 hatch has, like you're talking.
How to spot it? How to spot it?
Yeah, you're gonna see that with your overlord. You're not like when your overlord gets to his natural. Ideally, you're gonna see a little bit of differentiation in your hatchery to his hatchery, and then even if you don't see it, we're gonna be doing a lot of scouting. And so far in this game, up to 2 minutes, that is not something you have any access to figuring out yet. It's impossible. The only way you could figure out if it was a 15 hatch is if you drone scouted. But so up to this point, it doesn't matter. We'll get there though. It'll come soon.
Okay. Okay.
But But yeah, and then you would make your Overlord once you make your Lings and you're like close to supply blocking, and then you're good. So the next stage of ZvZ is your Overlord Scout needs. So like once you've confirmed it's an early pool, you would have 8 Lings being produced, which would be amazing, which would be really nice. And we're gonna look at how much you have when it gets here, and you can see look at this shit. Your natural has already your natural just finished just now, and it already took 150 damage while it was still building, which is not actually that bad yet, but it could have been reduced by quite a bit of damage if it was already done when he first got there. And your hatchery, instead of taking 150, would have only taken like 120 damage. That's like a little bit of time. That's extra time you have to save it, basically. We're talking about the armor difference when it is done and when it's not done. Now going forward, looking at your Overlord, you spotted a natural, okay? So I'm going to ask you a question right now. Do you know what it means when you spot a natural like this in ZvZ?
Actually, no.
Okay.
After the 12th pull.
Yes. So
I believe he's going to try transition to macro, but I'm not sure actually.
So this is when ZvZ gets really technical, and I'm also gonna be, like I said before, I'm gonna be giving you a VOD for this, so you'll always be able to rewatch this and rehear this again and again and again, which is really good. Because I guarantee this is gonna be hard to remember. So just know that it's gonna be hard to remember, but it's really important for understanding how Zerg scouting works. So you saw his Lings crossing your Overlord at 140, like the 140 to 145 block of time, which means it's a super high chance that it's not a 12 pull, it's a 13-12. And then on top of that, you see a natural right now that is started, but it's barely started. So what that means is for me, how I would read this and react to it is I would say there's a very high chance that this dude has Mind Gas because he did a 13-12 variation. And then there's also a very low chance that he's going to follow it up with Banelings. It is still a chance, but it's a low chance because he's expanding already. And that means that he's probably mined speed and then taken off gas and gone back to minerals because he needs more minerals to afford this. Unless he just stops making Lings or stops using his larva and then just hiccups his larva and goes for a hatchery and then goes back into it while mining gas, which would be really inefficient. So my guess is he's not mining gas anymore, but he probably has speed on the way. Now, if this hatchery was like, let's say 60% of the way done or like 50% of the way done by the time your Overlord gets here, and those Lings, instead of seeing them at 140, you saw them at 130, this would be a 12 pool gasless, which would mean there's no gas at all. There's no speedling follow-up. This guy is just trying to pressure you early and go into macro behind that, and just like, he's gonna make drones behind it probably and go into like maybe something else like a roach timing or anything really could be happening after it. But it's going to be a gasless version of it if the hatchery is way further along, because it means he just prioritized mineral only, and he didn't waste time mining gas. And then lastly, even if so basically the point I'm trying to make here is no matter what variation of pool it is, if the hatchery is further along, it means he prioritized minerals more. If the hatchery is less along, or if the hatchery wasn't there at all, it means he prioritized gas more. So the fact that he has a hatchery at all right now means that he probably took off gas. But if there was no hatchery here at all, that's when I would say, okay, Banelings are coming. Yep, you're about to deal with Banelings as well. That's what that would mean. So you can tell what his build's going to be before you even see what units are coming because of how he spends his resources. Because it's literally impossible to afford a hatchery and also make a Baneling nest and keep mining gas off of only like 12 drones.
Hive cluster under direct assault.
All right, so and then he has speed. So this is kind of expected for him to have speed. If he's going, because again, you saw it was the 13-12 variation, which means you saw it around 140. So knowing speed's a factor here is very possible. And now we're going to talk about how to respond, okay? How to respond properly. And again, I know this is going to sound really confusing, but I want to tell you all the ways that it's proper to respond. So if your opponent was going for a really, really, really far along natural, okay? It's really far along. We're talking about the fact that he most likely does not have gas. And it's just slow lings. You, as long as you react properly and you make your 8 lings, you probably could get away with just making lings yourself and pushing him off the hatchery. But it's extra safety measures if you pull your drones, and we're talking about pulling like 7 to 8 drones, and have like right as your lings finish, and have the drones and the lings overpower his lings and get him off your hatchery, and then go back to mining. I'm just gonna say drone pulling is probably the best way to react to this. It'll clean it up the fastest, and then you don't need a spine crawler, and that's it. So like we'll just say 8. You pull 8 drones right as your lings finish, right as you make 8 lings, and you fight them off with 8 drone, 8 ling, and then you can make like a couple more lings behind it. Like we can go up to about 10, maybe 12 lings and stop. Okay, and that's how you would deal with someone who goes gasless perfectly, and then you immediately go back into droning behind that. Now, if it's somebody who has a delayed gas, just like what this guy did, or sorry, it has a gas, but it's a delayed hatch, but it's still a hatchery at his natural, because it means he still wants to expand, which means he's probably not going to go banelings here, because he's focusing on the natural instead. What that means, what he wants to do is he wants to do damage to you and fuck over your natural, but at the same time turn into a macro game afterwards. So again, pulling your drones here makes sense. So if you have 8 lings, 8 drones, what that would do is that would allow you to push them off your hatchery really well. But I would say at this stage, don't stop making lings at like 10 or 12. Maybe make lings all the way up to like 16 or 18. Like make a bit more. Like so you're going to be still making lings up until your queens spawn. And what you'd want to do then is as soon as your queens are out, kind of just try your best to keep tabs on the minimap, because there's no guarantee how this guy has to play here. He could either flood you repeatedly, or he could go into drones. And you have to react to that based off of what your overlord sees. So if you see lings, keep crossing the map, you have to respond to that with lings yourself. But if you see a cease, like it just stops, all ling production has halted out of him, you can actually safely go back to droning once your queens are out, because queens are such a power move in this form of the game, because you could still go into banelings quickly yourself afterwards, and once banelings are out, all in potential for him is over if he just floods you with lings, because banes are there. But what queens can do is they can block the ramp, and they can buy you so much time to get banes, and even if he floods you, you'll most likely be fine. If your goal is to go for a baneling nest early. And then lastly, the final one of if the guy has no natural at all, then yes, I 100% would agree with you on a spine crawler. You need that. You also need to make lings nonstop, and you do not want to pull drones there, because there are going to be banelings morphing outside your base really fast, and if you pull drones, you have a very high risk of losing them, because you can't micro properly against banes. You have to split against banes, and then speedlings are just going to wreck you while you split. So you want to just mine as much minerals as you can before you have to deal with the banes, which means what you want to do then is you want to make as many lings as possible, and you want to try your best to trade ling versus ling. Even if it's like a little bit inefficient for you, where it's like he has 10 and you only have 8, still take that fight. Because if you kill 6 and he lives with 4, but his 4 that are left over are still also a little bit damaged, that is so much easier to clean up with your queens and future lings than it is to try and fight off like 4 banes and also 20 lings at once. If you just let him stockpile and you don't trade. And then eventually your spine crawler will come into play, and then you will also the last thing I haven't said yet is you will also prioritize baneling nest before speed versus a 13-12 no matter what, and versus a 12 pull you will prioritize speed and then go baneling nest. And always, no matter what you're against, as soon as you start speed, take 2 drones off gas for now, because you're going to need that money. And that's it. And now, do you have any questions? Because I bet that was confusing as fuck, but that's why I'm going to make this a VOD.
I got most of that, but I didn't understand why to pull drones from gas. The last thing you said.
You're never going to have enough money to spend your gas properly, ever. Because what's happening is you're spending so much larva on Zergling. You have to. So you're not going to have the correct mineral income you're supposed to have. So if you don't pull drones off gas, what's going to happen is you're going to be like, all right, I'm making Lings and Banes and defending myself, and you're going to be like, well, I only have like 80 minerals right now, and I have 240 gas. Like, I just can't spend my gas. And you do not need to make like 12 Banelings to defend yourself. You seriously only need to make like 4. Like you need to have like 4 at a time. So if he's like constantly flooding you, you can have like 4 there right now. And if he's going for an attack, you can and you can see that he's like morphing more Banes and he's still going really all in here. You can just make more Banes as the fight is about to start, and you can use your existing Banes that are already there to, you know, try to get a good connection. And by the time that happens, you'll have more Banes ready to go again. But that's only if he's super all in will you ever do that. And it does happen sometimes, but it's not always going to happen. But you do not ever want to have like 12 Banes just sitting there in your natural, because there's so much potential for you to fuck that up with micro, because that means that you have so many Banes to use now that if you ever clump them up, that you can easily get a good detonation for your opponent where he's like, oh, I just used 2 Banes to kill 10. You don't want that to happen. And then also on top of that, it's just overkill. If your opponent does not all in you, you're going to have so many Banes that are just sitting there. It's going to severely slow down your follow-up into the game. Because you don't want to be making Ling Bane either yourself all game. What you want to do is you want to gain control of your natural, and you want to go back into droning quickly so you can actually 2-base this. Because if your opponent is like, if he's doing like somewhat-ish all in to you, like if he's doing like if he's either really all in or if he's like mildly attacking you, but he's not really droning that much himself, what you can do to respond to that is if you take your drones off gas, like I said, you can still make Banes after you get speed. So because here's the thing, you have a Baneling nest and you have speed already invested into, and then I told you to take drones off gas. So you have you already have the expensive gas things that you need. And having only 1 drone mining gas at that point is easily going to give you enough gas to add on Banes every once in a while, which is all you're going to need. And if you have more of a mineral emphasis or a mineral focus here, it also allows you to make more queens if you're being all in. And if you're being all in and you have queens, it is so easy to defend that. Because if your opponent sends like 4 Banelings at your base, at that point, if you have like, let's say you have like 5 queens in front of your natural, because he's just all in, and you're just making queen. You not only can transfuse the front of your natural because it's going to be so hard for him to break queens, but the queens can actually kill the Banes, and at that point you don't even have to use your Banes unless he swarms your queens with all of his shit at once, which it makes it super easy to micro for you. And that's why you...
Okay,
yeah.
So every game in which I'm doing a macro build, I should pull drones right after the Baneling nest.
When you're getting attacked like early like this, yes. And
okay, and if I'm not attacked?
If it's a standard game, if you're gonna go Baneling nest opener, you would want to pull 1 drone off of gas if it's a standard game. Just for a little while until your natural's back up to like 12 drones on minerals, and then you could put one more drone back on gas. And the reason why this is because Ling Bane is not an ideal opener if you want a 2-base layer tech. It's not ideal. I would say you almost always want to go for a 3rd base, and taking that 1 drone off gas means you're going to have a little bit more minerals to mine with and a little bit less gas to have to use, which is both of these things are important. Because if you're mining minerals a little bit faster, obviously a little bit faster minerals means you're going to get a base a little bit faster. Like any mineral expense is going to happen a little bit faster. But if you're mining gas a little bit slower, it means that you don't have to spend your minerals to also then use that gas as well as fast. So unless your goal is to like go for a fucking Ling Bane all in and just make as many Banes as possible, if that's not your game plan, taking a drone off of gas is huge because it allows you to play more defensive and more economical. Just for the opener.
Okay, nice. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, it's huge. It'll definitely make a difference in how fast you can ramp up your economy, and then you can start. Once you go back in, once you have like 12 drones on the natural, and then you resaturate your gas properly, then you're good to go. Like then it doesn't matter. You don't have to pull off ever again, and you're fine because you'll have plenty of minerals to work with then. And just to clarify, if you go for a there's 3 kinds of builds you can open with in ZvZ, okay? This is how they all work. And this is assuming it's a standard game, all right? So in a standard game where there's no early pools, if your plan is to go for upgraded Evo Chamber Lings, what you would want to do then is you would want to leave 3 on gas until you get speed and the Evo Chamber upgrade you're looking for, and then pull either all or 2 out of 3 drones off of gas while you then utilize that. So you can have lots of minerals to make lots of hatcheries and make your larvae into lings and queens and have that. You're like constantly pumping larvae like crazy. Now the other one is if you open up standard Ling Bane. If you want to go Ling Bane and that's your plan, you make a baneling nest, and as soon as you so you get speed and then a baneling nest, and as soon as you get a baneling nest, you take 1 drone off of gas if it's a standard game. And then that allows you to still have a good amount of gas to make banes with, defensively or aggressively. It's not overkill on the banes. You're not looking to make like half of your lings in the banes. You're just looking to make like 4 or 6 at a time. And then you're good. And then it allows you to have a third base, and you can do whatever you want with it, aggressively or defensively. And the last one is Roach Warren openers. If you go Ling Roach, what you do then is as soon as you get speed, you take 2 out of 3 drones off of gas. So you're only sitting on 1. And it works the same way as a baneling nest first, where as soon as your natural has about 12 drones on minerals, you then resaturate your gas back to full. And that's how they all work. Where it gives you the most economical advantages you could possibly have. Does that make sense?
Yep, I've tried to write down almost everything, so it's cool.
Okay. I know I'm talking fast, and if you want me to slow down as well, I can say these things slower. But there will be a VOD too for you, like, so that'll help as well.
No, I don't have any problem with understanding English. I have problem with speaking it. So
Okay. Well, I just
talk as fast as you want.
Okay. I know I talk fast sometimes. I just don't want you to be like writing down the last thing I said, and I'm saying the next like 2 things as well, and you're like, God, the fuck is he saying?
No, it's not a problem.
Okay. So anyways, I told you all like the proper things here for lots of different things that are, potentially going to happen in your games. But now going back to this game specifically, 2 things that fucked you over here, or really 3 things that fucked you over here. Number 1, you made a spine crawler, and that is a lot of minerals that you're not able to use on your lings as fast. Because notice, right now you're making 10 lings at once. You should be making ling at the second you have a larva every single time. And this situation that you're in right now. So never wait on larva. You always spend it the second you can, because your brain should be like, the second you know you're being attacked really heavily like this, ling, like as fast. Every time you have a larva, just spend it right away, because you need to reinforce as fast as possible so that these lings can get in the fight as soon as it happens, because it's going to be happening the whole time. He's going to be poking you nonstop. So the spine crawler definitely fucked that over a little bit. You can't afford a spine and queen and all your larvae on ling all at once. It's impossible. Now the second thing that screwed you over is you made an overlord as well. And we already talked about the 2-minute rule with overlord, and that's why that is. As soon as you see lings coming, do not make that overlord, because it's so expensive and you don't need that supply right now, because you know your lings are going to die and there's going to be trades happening, so you're never going to supply block at this stage. And then you eventually would make the overlord. It's going to eventually happen, but you're not going to prioritize it. It's going to, like, what's going to happen is you're probably going to make like 10 lings and then an overlord, instead of an overlord and then make 6 lings, because you can't afford it. And then the last thing that's fucking you over, the third thing, is your gas. You're mining too much gas, which is, again, not allowing you to have enough minerals to do everything you need to properly here. And what I would say needs to happen properly for you right now in this game would not have been a spine crawler. I don't think you needed a spine, but it would have been nice if you could have made queens constantly and lings constantly. And then eventually you'll get to banelings as well. And a good number to go for queens is you keep making queens until you stabilize. Literally, that's about how it goes. So if you end up having 6 queens and then you stabilize, great. If you end up only having 2 queens because they keep dying over and over and over, and then finally the next 2 spawn, but yet you stabilize because you have banes or something, that's fine. The queen count is always going to change based off of how the micro goes, because you can't always expect your queens to not die. If your opponent micros really well against you, your queens are probably going to die repeatedly, but you should always be remaking them, because queens are so fucking important at defending all ins like this. They're so good at doing it. And that's why there needs to be all these things combined that I just said. It all goes, it's like a common denominator in all three of these things. Less gas, no spine, no overlord. It frees up a lot of your minerals to do this. It's all mineral focused. So you have less expenses and all these other things that you don't need right now. And instead it allows you to constantly pump lings and queens until you don't need to do that anymore. And then you can go back to like doing a standard build. And now all these things where your lings are so stifled in production that it's making all your shit die isolated, and your natural will die also because of that. And now once this happens, if this ever does happen, which it will sometimes, at this stage, this is what your new response should be. Okay. Hatchery, rebuild it as fast as you can. Make a queen. And now, because your hatchery died, now you actually have to build a spine crawler. And this is why this is important. You just lost a lot of control of your natural, and you just lost a lot of power because you have no queens. They're all dead. So now your queen production is now only down to 1. So even if he does attack you again, it's going to be really hard to defend it with just like the 1 queen or like the smaller queen count. And if he keeps attacking your natural, it's going to be a pain in the ass to defend it. So what you need to do now is you need to build a baneling nest, build a spine crawler, and then your queen should build a creep tumor to go down your ramp so you can plant a spine down at your natural and have banes guarding it and, a queen or something as well. So it gives you like a supplement of power where it's not as good as what you wanted originally, but you kind of have to do it now. Otherwise, your opponent can just abuse you again and again and again and keep denying your natural over and over for like the next 3 minutes or 2 minutes if he really wanted to. So spine's required now because you just lost a natural and it's kind of fucked up. The only exception would be if for whatever reason your natural died, but yet you still had like 3 queens alive or 4 queens alive, then you would not need a spine crawler. But that's most of the time. If your natural dies, your queens are going to be dead already because he's going to kill your queens too. That's usually what would happen, or either that, or you took a really bad fight early and he just kills it right away before you even have queens. But the golden rule is if you don't have queens, you need a spine at this stage once the natural's dead. And then I would say at this stage too, you would want to stop making lings at around 8 to 10. Just don't make any more because you have zero intentions. You should have 0 intentions of attacking him. So making a fuckload of lings now makes no sense. You should have 100% of your intentions and hoping that you can recover in drones. Because if you attack him, you guaranteed are going to lose the game. I would say there's like a 1% chance you might win, and it's if your opponent micros like an absolute derp. And then it's like, oh, well, okay, I died. But it's usually not going to happen because he also has queens. And you're probably not going to break him. So you need to stop making lings, start making drones, and then occasionally add banes onto your units. Like sit here with 4, and if you have to use some of them, build some more, like out of your current lings. Try to just have like a little ling pool you can make banes out of, but just rely on banes as spine and queen now. And what you would do then is you would over drone your main while you're rebuilding your natural, and you would saturate your gas back to full once you're at 16 on the mineral line, and you would just go. Your main mineral line should look like 24 or 22 out of 16 by the time your natural's done, and then you just transfer drones. And if your opponent goes for like repeated attacks, even though he killed your natural, some people do this, he just keeps attacking you and keeps attacking you and keeps attacking you. But suddenly you have Bane, Queen, Spine. You could potentially take good trades again, and he might throw away his advantage and it stabilizes the game. Because even though he's had a natural longer than you, he just never made drones and he just kept making units, and then he just threw them away to Banes. Ideally, that's what could happen. However, if he kills your natural like this, that does give him the advantage. And then if you make drones, at least you're still going to be behind, but the game is relatively close. Like it's not like you're like at this holy fuck you're dead situation. Like you have a chance still in the mid game. You just have to do a couple of good things in the mid game that might get you back in the game, like a defensive attack where you hold a good choke point or something, or lots of things could happen in ZvZ, but something cost efficient for you in the mid game is very realistic, and the game is only like, if he's at like 100% and you would be like 80% of his 100%. So it still is a chance. But if you were to attack him right now or make lings constantly right now, I would say, again, your chances to win this game go way the fuck down below like 10%. Like you would probably just lose. So right now with your larva, this should start being drones. And you're starting to make drones. So that's correct. But now what should happen too is you can see you have 100 gas, and you have weight, and you also just made a bane nest, so you have 120 gas more than you needed to make the bane nest, and these drones needed to have been back on minerals since that could have happened, like 2 out of the 3, because you can see your mineral line is only 13 out of 16, and look what's happening right now with your resources. You have way more gas than you need, but you actually cannot afford to make a queen right now, or spend that larva at your natural. And all at the same time, like there's things that need to happen right now with your minerals that you cannot afford, but yet you have plenty of gas that you can't use either. So that's why the mineral emphasis is so important. Like there's always going to be a lot of mineral costs early that you cannot afford, but you'll get them faster if you prioritize minerals and take off gas once you get the important things that cost gas. Yeah, I see your gas just is gonna like ramp up to like 200 to 300, and you're gonna, the only way you could spend it is by fucking up your minerals again by making a bunch of banes, which is gonna just, that slows you down even more again. So you're getting aggressive kinda, and you're making banes mid map. This is really risky, only because in ZvZ. There should always be overlords spread everywhere, okay? And neither one of you has the greatest overlord spread. I think you have a better overlord spread across his base at his side. You can actually see if he leaves his natural or leaves his main. But you have no overlords really in the middle of the map that much. Okay, you do have one. I want to see if you see him run back to his base, or if he just disappears in the map. Okay, you do see it. So at least you know he's at his base. Because what I was going to say is if his lings actually did not cross your overlord, and they like ran up to the top middle of the map or something like that, there's a very high chance you could be counterattacked when you're sitting here in the middle of the map. And then if you were counterattacked, the game would be over right now. You would die. Because you're so far out and exposed right now. And you definitely don't want to be going for an attack right now. Because if you lose these units, which you guaranteed are going to if you attack his base, you're going to have to rebuild them, which means you have to make less drones again. And it puts you in a deeper hole. And you see how this dude is just making masslings, and now he's making roaches? His drone count is actually tied with yours, and it's because you're making drones. So again, this game is actually kind of like you're not ahead. You're not ahead. He's had the hatchery longer than you because yours died. So he does have a little bit of a lead, but this game is so like it's stabilizing though. Like your economies are the same, and you totally could get yourself back into it if you don't make bad choices here. The best way to play this out would be, I know that your army's getting a bit more aggressively postured right now, but the best thing you could do would be maybe instead of attacking with an army, just scout him with like 2 lings, just to see what his follow-up's going to be. If you don't see it with your overlord, you could just get a couple lings in there and be like, oh, roaches, oh, fucking mass lings. And then you could be like, how do I want to respond to that? I can make my own banes. I can make my own roach warren, stuff like that. And you could try to cost efficiently react to what you see. But if you ever get to a situation where in the next couple seconds you're going to be here, where you have more drones than he does, which is now you have 23, he has 22, even though you lost your natural, you're the one who's going to gain the leads now over time. Like every second that goes by now, you are the one who gets a little bit further ahead than him. You're not ahead yet, but you are going to get there at a faster pace. So your build now ramps up just a little bit faster than his does over time. Every drone you have over him makes that happen. But if you lose these lings right now, this is going to open you up to a counterattack that's going to kill you. Because not only are you making drones still, which I like, but he's making army, and he's been making army for the last minute, 2 minutes, because he's just making lings stockpiled and now roaches. and you're making drones, and if you throw your army away, you're going to have this major disparity of time where he's been making units for 2 minutes, and you've been making drones for 2 minutes, and now you have nothing to be able to. You don't have enough to like hold it when it hits you. So a scout would be good here, not an attack, just to see what you're up against. And if you see roaches, a great response to that is roaches yourself or spine crawlers. Roaches are better, I would say. Spines are acceptable though if you have to do it. Like the spines are the only thing. Basically, spines would be made if you're like, oh fuck, I'm about to get attacked right now, and I do not have enough time to start roach warren and then make roaches. If that's the situation you're in, then yes, make spine crawlers because you have no choice. But if you're like, oh, I scouted that he's starting to make roaches, and I'm going to make my own roach warren now, and then I'm going to eventually have roaches when he does his timing. If you feel like you have enough time for it, then make a roach warren. It's always going to be the better choice if you have time to do it. And you see that attack right there? You lost everything. All your Banes are dead. You killed a queen. You traded Ling for Ling, but nothing has happened to his roaches, and he's still, making them. So this is going to start becoming a problem for you. I mean, I do like that you have a little bit more drones than him, at least. But now, look at this. Okay, so he's actually not attacking you, all right? He could, but he's not. I think there's a big risk right now where if you were making drones and you threw your army away and then now he can counterattack you, that is a big risk that you run when you do shit like that. But this dude's actually deciding to make drones now. But again, this is not actually great for you because of what just happened. Because you a second ago, you had the drone lead because this guy was making units. And now you've lost the drone lead because as soon as your army died, what happened? This is always going to happen. You remade an army again. You're like, oh, fuck, I lost my Ling Banes, so I remade 14 Lings with another 4 in production. So you've made 18 Lings. And on top of that, you've just now also made 2 Banes. So you remade 20 Zerglings and 2 Jesus, sorry, I need to take a drink of water in a second. Ugh. You remade 20 Lings and 2 of them turned into Banelings. And that's because your army just died. So you got paranoid, like, oh, fuck, I need to make army again. And you remade an army, which is slowing your drone count down super fucking hard. Because it was an attack that didn't need to happen. So I'm going to stop there for just a second. So far, do you have any questions about what we're talking about?
No.
Okay.
Everything's fine.
Everything is good.
Yep.
All right.
When I see when I watch the replay now, I see that this attack was absolutely meaningless.
Yeah, and I hope that's why I spend so much time talking about it in the beginning, because all the reasons we explained in the beginning are why that did not make sense to attack him. If you just made drones there defensively, and because you will never have enough larvae to overpower him if he is gonna attack you again. Best case scenario is he does attack you again, but you scout what he's gonna attack you with while he's building it up, because you have speedlings. But even though you have speedlings, you don't need to make a lot of them. You just need to make some of them for the baneling pool. Basically, we're talking 10 or less, like 8 or 10, and then you could also grab like 2 of those 10 and be like, hey, go scout his base. Oh look, it's roaches and lings. Okay, how about I make my own roach warren? And then I scout him again in like the next minute or 45 seconds if he hasn't moved out yet, and see how many roaches he still has. Like, let's say the first time you scout him, you see 5 roaches. The second time you scout him, you see 12 roaches. And you're like, okay, yeah, this dude is not making drones. His mineral line only had like 5 drones on it or 6 drones on it. And his roach count is like 12. And my natural mineral line has like 14 drones on it now. So how about I start making roaches defensively so that by the time he gets here, I can match his number. And I have way more drones so that not only will I be able to match him as soon as he gets here, I will pass him because I'm mining more than him. ZvZ is all... Jesus, I need to... I'm sorry, dude. Give me like 2 seconds. I need to get a water really fast. My throat is so dry. Ugh.
Sure, man. Take your time.
Thank you. Okay. I have a water. That was fast. Now, ZvZ, the game plan or the strategy of ZvZ, all right? It's all about how can you attain more drones than your opponent and maintain that. And one of the biggest ways that happens is you have to start scouting your opponent with Zerglings and paying attention to what's going on. So understanding what is capable of your opponent is a big deal, which is what we really broke down a lot in the early game here already, in the first couple minutes of the game. But now, what you want to look for now is every time you scout, you want to scout your opponent, ideally. You want to have Overlord spread that's nicely put out around his base so you can see when he crosses the map. And you also want to have a Zergling periodically going into his base. Like, we'll say, I like to do 2 lings at a time because there's one ling. If you only send 1 ling at a time, there's a good chance it's going to get picked off by like a spine or a roach or a queen. Something like that sometimes will kill it. But 2 usually gets you the scout you're looking for. Like if 1 dies, your second one still goes fast across the creep enough to where you can see what you need to see. And what you're looking for, highly important, is his drone count compared to your drone count. And you compare, you can, like, because a lot of people, they don't know how to read a fucking Zerg versus Zerg. They're like, I don't understand if I'm being all in or not. It's impossible to tell. I don't get it. But let's just say you made drones. Let's say you made 10 Zerglings and you just made drones. And off of this, so far right now, when you scout him, you have 14 drones on your mineral line at your natural. So you have 10 lings and 14 drones. And then you look at your opponent's base and he's got 5 drones and you didn't see any army other than like 2 units at his natural because your scout died. But you're like, wow, I have 14 drones and he's only got 5. That tells you so much already, like right there. That tells you, okay, this dude is fucking stockpiling units. Like why the fuck would he only have 5 drones? He's not AFK. He's not just waiting to build drones. He's not building drones. He's building units. So a lot of people don't think about that concept. You just compare your stuff versus his. And the exact opposite can happen if you're all-inning him. Most of the time you don't scout, though, when you all-in. You just all-in. Like, the all-in itself is kind of the scout because you're going to be aggressive anyways. But let's just say, hypothetically, you sent 2 Zerglings into his base to scout him while you were stockpiling units for yourself to all-in. And you're like, I only have 5 drones. And your opponent has a fully saturated mineral line at his natural versus your 5. And you're like, wow, okay, he's been droning, so my all-in is going to be better now. Like, I'm going to have a high chance to kill him here. Like I said, most people don't scout when they all-in. They just all-in, but there's always discrepancies on, like, who makes what. You can be like, wow, he's making this, and it's not like me, which means he's making the opposite. Or he's making, or you're like, wow, he's got as many drones as I do. So you know there's not, like, fucking 20 roaches up his ramp or something if you physically can't afford to do that yourself. Because there's not enough time has passed for you to be able to have afforded that or to be able to made that. So you just always compare your build to his build. And if your natural dies, like it did this game, that's not great. It's not like you're like so far behind that it's unrecoverable because you can see this apply right now. Even though you even just took a bad fight, you're still 40 to 49, and your drone count is still. You're still ahead currently by 4, but it's about to go away in a second here because you made 5 drones. But the game is still close-ish, is what I'm trying to say. Because here's the thing. Here's how this works. You have to think about ZvZ as well in stages. And if you think about ZvZ at the first stage, the first 2.5 to 3 minutes of the game, you were actually ahead the whole time. And the reason why that is because... Oh my god, I'm like struggling to talk right now, dude. The reason why you were ahead early in the first 3 minutes is because your opponent went for an early pool. He made lings. And you made drones. You were mining off of like 19 drones when he was mining off of like 13 drones for the first 3 minutes of the game. Like you went up to 19 quickly, he stopped, and he just made ling, 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 ling. He attacked you early. And then he expanded. So you, like, for the first 3 minutes, you had a not a major lead, but a little bit of a lead, and then that lead turned into you losing your hatchery, and then you also made a lot of lings as well yourself to defend yourself, but you still lost a hatchery, and you didn't even kill his whole army. He just ran away after he killed your hatchery with like probably 8 speedlings or something, or 6 speedlings. So that's not ideal, not the greatest. And now from there, he had a natural, and you started to rebuild yours. So now he had a lead against you at that stage of the game, But you also have to factor in the lead you had in the first 3 minutes when he was doing his low economy Zergling attack. So your lead was slowly getting diminished as he now has the lead, and he passes your position as to who's ahead in the game over time, and now he's got the lead. But because of what you had initially, it's not like you're just so far behind that the game is over. You can come back from that, even though you're going to be a little bit behind until something else happens. You are still in a very realistic position to be okay here because you lost 0 drones. You lost no drones. The only drones you lost were potential drones because you made lings instead. Like those could have been drones, but instead they were made into lings. But you still had a fully saturated mineral line, essentially. It wasn't fully saturated entirely because you made the spine still. You made the Bane nest. It was close. It was close. So the game is close is all I'm trying to say. Like it's very doable. So going into the mid game and knowing how to read the game is important, because a lot of people think that as soon as they lose the hatchery or something like that, they're just dead. Game's over. I lose. It's impossible. I fucked up. But it's not. Like there's still chances for you to do it. It's just you need to figure out a way to make drones. Like we said before, the best way to do that is to most likely scout him, react to what's going on. Ideally, Banes if he goes mass lings, Banes again if he goes ling and Bane, or make your own roach horn if he makes roaches, and that's all you got to do, and then make drones with it too, and try your best to realize, okay, I'm about to be all in, and now I need to start making units, but still squeeze out drones until that point happens. And a good way to read when that point happens is, again, you compare drone count to drone count. So let me say this. I want to try and make this as least confusing as possible, but I'm going to give you two example scouts that'll hopefully explain when to make units. If you scout him and you have 8 drones and you scout that he has 8 drones, you can make drones. Because it's impossible for you to die at that point in the game if the game is relatively stable and nothing crazy has happened yet where it's like you're so far behind. In this game, I would say nothing crazy has happened yet. So if you have a similar drone count, you could make drones. And then you could scout him again and decide what you're going to do from there. Now, if you scout him and you have way more drones than he does, and he has units, you need to make units. Because if you have more drones already than he does, and he's been making units for a while, if you make drones again, and now you have a fucking ridiculous more... like, if you're like 16 drones in the middle line, and he's at 5 drones in the middle line, and you scout that he's got a bunch of units... and you scout him and go, you know what? I'm going to make another 8 drones, and I'm going to make 2 gases at my natural and saturate them. Because that sounds good. You're going to probably die if he attacks you, because you just have no fucking units. But if you make units then, you should be okay, because Defender's Advantage means while he crosses the map, you make up the difference, and you could be okay. So that's how that works. That's how that will always work. All right, moving forward. Yeah, and so you guys are both kind of like, at this stage, I would say you guys are both kind of like making units and making, you're making things, but then you're making drones, and you're making things, and you're making drones. Neither one of you is really going full on here. Like, for instance, your opponent making a spine crawler, even though he already has roaches, and he sees you have a 3rd base going down, is not a good thing to do. That's a horrible spine crawler. Doesn't make any sense. And then for you, making your gases as early as you just did on your natural is not good either, because it's way too early for your gases at your 3rd. I mean, your 3 gases at your natural. Like I would say you ideally would want to stay on 1 gas until you're at least fully saturated on that natural. It's too early. And I know you want to go roaches, but like you can see again in the gas in the top right, your gas is so high compared to your minerals, and it's because of you've been mining it the whole game, and now you're prioritizing it even more at your natural. Your build is super inefficient right now. So if you would have resaturated your gas in your main when you had about 12 on the natural, and then taken your gas at your natural when you had a fully saturated natural, and then made more drones.
I did these gases because I was supply blocked. I wanted to make 2 more drones.
Okay.
That was the reason.
If
But I'm not sure whether that's okay to do, but that was my logic.
if you make the gases, I mean, I'm glad you're not mining from them yet. That's good. If you were gonna, if like you, because you made them when you had 6 drones, and if you started mining them, and let's say you stayed at like 4 to 6 drones, and then fully saturated those gases, I would have saw you having like 200 or 100 minerals with like 1,000 gas. I'd be like, holy fuck, like this is a major gas discrepancy here. But if you do ever want to make these because of supply block, cancel them as soon as you make whatever you're making from the supply block. So like,
Okay.
because you'll still get the, like, if you make a gas, build a drone, cancel the gas, you still get that drone, but then you don't have the gas just sitting here as a gas before you need it. Like your minerals are definitely needing to be mined as much as possible. Okay. So he pushes out. He kills your third. He has a third as well now, finishing. And you see that. So again, at this stage of the game, what you need to do is, I would say, retake your third. It's important. And this is when it's starting to get a little weird, because ZvZ is, I feel like, the hardest matchup to actually understand where the fuck you're at in the game, because I'm telling you to scout more than I want you to scout, like more than I think you should be scouting at your level of skill. I'm telling you to scout as much as I would tell like a Masters 1 player to scout, or like a fucking GM player to scout. But that's the only way you're actually gonna fucking be able to read the game in ZvZ, because ZvZ is one of those matchups where your opponent can literally be like, you know what, fuck it. It's time to make mass units. I don't feel like making drones anymore. I'm just going to make units, and attack. Or I'm going to stockpile units for like 3 minutes and then attack. Or I'm just going to make crazy amounts of drones and then, and then eventually make units off of a good economy. Like, there's a lot of variance that can happen in ZvZ, and you need to be aware of what is happening. So throwing a scout at your opponent is important every once in a while. And I would say the only workaround in ZvZ to not care about this at all is if you went for like the beta GM style roach wall off. That's like the only way you get around this, where you don't have to scout constantly, because then all you do is you saturate as fast as you can and make roaches. Like you saturate as fast as you can first and then make roaches second. But if you do any type of ling opener, you have to scout. So like right now, again, it's a question mark. At the stage of the game you're in right now, it's, okay, he's got a third. I don't. Mine died. And I want to rebuild it, but I also don't want to do the wrong thing here. If my opponent... So here's how it works. If you make units now, because you're paranoid, which you're starting to make units again, and he makes drones, you need to attack. If you make units and he makes units, you need to be vigilant and wait. Because you don't want to attack if he's making units and you're making units, because all that happens there is you give him defender's advantage. Because even if you both have 20 roaches and you cross the map and you fight his units, he'll have 20 roaches versus your probably 12 roaches, because you have to realize that defender's advantage means that his roaches that just got built are in the fight right away, whereas yours that just got built have to cross the map. So you don't want to give your opponent the advantage of defender's advantage if you're both making units. And then if your opponent is yeah, that's it. So if he's making drones, you want to attack. If he's making units, you want to be patient and wait until one of you decides to do something different, or until you get a good defensive position. Because you always throw the lead away if you, because you're both making units the whole time, only one of you should have the advantage over that, which is like, it's because like, I didn't catch him making drones earlier, and now he's got more drones than me, and now he's making units, which means I need to do something or I'm just going to die. And that could be you trying to be greedy yourself and make drones as well in a risky way. Or you tech to something that can deal cost efficiently with roaches, whether that be like lurkers or mutas or defensively postured ravagers, or something like that. Or you just fucking attack when he makes drones. Like, one of these things has to happen. You have to be aware of what he's doing. Because if you just let your opponent get away with drones and you just sit there, that's a good way to lose the game while you make units.
Mineral field depleted.
So you're still making a lot of roaches, okay? And this is that moment. You can see you just took supply lead, right? Like you're the one who's actually had the supply deficit ever since your natural died up until right now. And you just took supply lead, and the reason why that is because your opponent just made a big round of drones. But on top of that, here, look at this. On top of the fact that your opponent just made a big round of drones, you actually have more drones still, because you actually went crazy on drones earlier through the roach versus roach trade phase, which is like you saturated to a fully saturated natural quickly, and then made roaches, and your opponent didn't. So if you would have scouted that and you would have been like, wow, his mineral line looks like shit and mine's fully saturated, like earlier, way earlier on, that would have been a good confidence booster for you to be like, cool, now I can off of better drones than my opponent, I can just make units and be fine. I mean, it's unfortunate that your third died, but you still eventually pushed him away. But that tells you so much information about the game. Like, you don't have to all in him now, and you're fine. So, like, you have to know these things to know what the fuck you're doing is okay, and not a gamble. Not like, I don't know, we'll just figure it out. We'll see what happens. So scouting, like I said before, is huge. It's important. It makes you make the right choices. And, like, for instance, your opponent, because, like, here's the thing, right? Why does that make sense? Why did you gain the lead? How does that make any fucking sense? Your opponent had the lead for a while, and then now suddenly you have the lead. It's because while you were making drones, your opponent was making roaches and spinecrawler. And then he took a third, and then he made drones. That is so fucking inefficient if he does that, because what could have happened is when you were making drones and he was making roaches, if he just didn't make a spinecrawler and just made lings and flooded behind roaches, he could have killed you. Probably. Or done a lot of damage to you, if that's what units he was going to make at that stage. But he chose to sit back defensively and make a spine. So he lost his advantage there. And then by the time he did choose to attack, it was after your drones were already done for a while, and now you had time to build roaches with that good economy. So you defended his attack when he finally got there. So you, again, like I say that, I will say this a lot because this is just how ZvZ is. You have to scout if you play a Zergling style. And both of you played a Zergling style this game to open.
Swarm forces under attack.
And now you're both tied 40-40. But look at this, okay? You just made a round of drones. And I like that.
How often should I scout?
Every minute. Seriously.
Every minute.
And that's every minute.
With 2 Zerglings.
Yes. It's every minute until you're fully saturated on 3 bases. And then who gives a shit? Just make units. All game. Because the goal of ZvZ is who can get to 66 drones faster if you're playing a macro game. And you need to not basically, it's like, imagine this, okay? It's like, here's like an analogy, okay? Imagine there's it's like a temperature, like pressure gauge. And every time you make drones, it's like increasing the temperature, the pressure. It's like, there's a chance where if you drone too hard, too fast, it's just going to explode and then it's over and you lose. But you have to like watch it. You have to, or this is a bad analogy. I'm not going to continue with it. It's just bad. But I will say, all you need to do is you need to make sure you drone at a healthy pace yourself, but not so fast that you die because your opponent's all-inning and you don't pay attention to that. So as long as you see your opponent is either not sacrificing drones really hard, or if he's not basically going to all-in you right now, you can still keep droning and keep droning and keep droning at a fast pace. But you need to like balance. I need to be okay here and not die, but I need to also drone as quickly as I can to 66. And the good way to read that, again, like I said, is you need to scout his mineral lines and see what he's doing while whatever you're doing. And if you make drones first, that's okay. Just as long as you don't make like 3 rounds of drones first. Like 1 round of drones is fine. You can always have defender's advantage catch you up defensively and defend that. But like I said before, like 3 rounds of drones where you're making drones for the next like 90 seconds, that's a bit excessive, and you're probably gonna die if he all-ins you. So you have to just that's why I say every minute scouting is important, because it's constantly giving you updates as to if you're gonna get all-in or if he's macroing. And then by like, if you're playing a solid game, by like 6 minutes or 7 minutes, you could be fully saturated. By about 7 minutes, you could be fully saturated. And then if your opponent's not all-inning you, and then you go from there. You just once you're fully saturated on 3 bases, I'm not ever going to tell you, oh, make like 90 drones or make like 80 drones. You don't really need to in ZvZ, because all you're making in ZvZ is roaches. Like, most ZvZs are just fucking roaches. And roaches are cheap as shit. They're easily maxable on 3 base saturation. And because if you're the guy who's always like, I'm going to make 80 drones and then go Spire or something like that, you're going to die to someone else who just goes roaches on 3 base. Like, he's going to run you over. Roaches are a great way to open ZvZs. You can transition into other things if you want to later. But just to open ZvZ, it's a great idea just to go roaches. And go from there.
Why do we need to make 80 drones with ZVT and ZVP, but here we need only 66?
Because there is nothing your opponent can do off of 3 bases that is as powerful as roaches are in ZVT and ZVP. There's nothing. If you go up to 80 drones in ZVP and ZVT, you would have already figured out you're being all-in well before that, because it would be like, oh, I'm getting mass charge a lot all-in, or this is happening, or that's happening, and then that kind of a game doesn't apply anymore at all. Like, if you would die during the droning phase, basically, if you were droning that hard. But if the game is a macro game in ZVT and ZVP, you're not making just roaches all game. You're making more expensive things. You're making hydras. You're adding in banelings. You're going into lurkers. You're making mutalisks. You're doing so many other things than just making roaches all day. But in ZvZ, you're making roaches because you can make them so fucking fast. And if your opponent doesn't, you will run him over if he's teching too hard too quickly. And you play efficiently. And then you also have to play defensively with roaches too, where if your opponent's making roaches, you kind of need to match that to a degree to not die so you don't die while you're trying to tech to something. You don't have to go roaches all game. You go ahead. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. You go.
Is it okay to skip roaches and go to Mudas, Lingbane Mudo, for example?
Yes, but that's advanced.
That's advanced. Okay.
Yeah, it's a different kind of game. Like, you totally can do that, but you have to be very, very active and aware of what your lings are doing and making it effective. Because if you don't do it, if you just kind of like sit back and make drones and lings, and you're like, I don't know, I'm gonna make some lings now. Oh, let's make some drones now. I'll make some lings. I don't know. I feel like making more lings. I'll make like 8 banes. Sounds good. If you just randomly make shit, there's a good chance that you're not gonna capitalize with your lings, and then also on top of that, you're teching to aspire, and you're saving resources to then be like, I need to make like 8 mutas in a second here, and your opponent hits a timing where he just gets roach speed and attacks you, you're going to die. Very likely. That's going to happen a lot. The thing about lings is you need to stall your opponent out a little bit, and you need to make them feel pressured defensively, and one of those things that goes with that is not throwing your army away. Because every StarCraft player knows if you ever have your opponent attack you and they lose everything, that is like an immediate pressure reliever where you're like, oh, I feel like I can do whatever I want now, and that might be attacking if I want to. And in Zerg vs. Zerg, a lot of times, when your opponent attacks you, what do? You make units, like military units. And if you kill their whole army, and now you have a lot of military units, what do you do then? You counterattack. So you have to be very careful with your lings in ZvZ to not throw them away, which is why it's advanced. Because you don't...
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, you don't want to be stuck making lings all day because it's going to severely delay your mutas. But then you also don't want to lose your lings because that's going to open you up to a counterattack, which could kill you. But while all simultaneously pressuring your opponent. Excuse me. All right. I'm gonna kind of go through this replay a little bit faster now. because I kind of want to give you an example, and we've been going for a while. We did a lot of analysis breakdown here. But okay, so you're almost fully saturated. So like, okay, I'm gonna say it right now. I'm just gonna say this in general, this as a incorrect thing that happened. You were making roaches and ravagers and drones and roaches and ravagers and drones, and you were just cycling between all of these things all the way until 12 minutes. Pretty much exactly at 12 minutes, you hit 66. You're hitting 66 drones about like 6 minutes after you should, or like 5 minutes after you should. It's way late. It's very late. Like you should be, and because you can see neither one of you is maxed out right now. And neither one of you, if you look at resources lost, neither one of you has lost an overwhelming amount of resources that would make this still make sense. The only reason why neither one of you has maxed out yet is because you're both playing super paranoid and you're both slowly saturating your bases. You could max out in a ZvZ in a game like this where you lost your natural, and then the game kind of like went into this like weird. Your opponent attacked you once with roaches in the mid game, and then now he's attacking you again finally the second time. You could have maxed, I bet, around like 9 minutes and 30 seconds this game to 10 minutes. If you just prioritized drones while you saw your opponent was also droning as well. Because think about it like this, okay? If my opponent makes half drone, half roach, half drone, half roach, half drone, half roach, that's like 1.5 roach waves and 1.5 drone waves over the course of like 90 seconds. And if I scout that and I go, oh, okay, it's half drone, half roach, I'm making full drone because he's still making drones, and there's still like it's still close, and his mineral line is still close to mine. But now let's say what that means is that I'm fully saturated on my natural, and he's halfway saturated on his. And then I scout and I see that and I go, okay, well, he's got drones. I'm going to make one more round of drones because his drone count is still similar to mine. Somewhat. It's like, it's in the ballpark. He's not stockpiling 50 roaches here. He's still focusing on drones to a degree. So I make another round of drones, and I let's say I fully saturate one full round of drones on my third. I just make one inject round of drones, and then I scout him again. And what I'm looking for is I want to make more drones again if I can, because I still want to saturate my gas. And I look at him and I go, okay, I have a fully saturated third. He has a fully saturated natural, but he has no fucking drones at his third. 0 drones at his third. And I go, and he's also made a little bit of roaches both times because he's going drone, roach, drone, roach, drone, roach. So now he's got like 10 or like 12 more roaches than I do, but he has no drones on the third. And I go, okay, well, now it's time for a roach wave. And before I saturate my third mineral line, because he has not made any fucking drones at his third yet, because he's doing roach, drone, and then my scout dies. And a minute later, I go back again, and I see, okay, wow, he's got 8 drones on his third, and his roach count is, again, a little bit bigger than it was before, because he's going drone, roach, drone, roach, drone, roach. And I go, and this whole time, I've had a fully saturated third for minerals. And I go, okay, well, now he's saturating his third again. How about I take all my gases now, the rest of them, to finish off my saturation? Because he's still making drones. Even though he's making roaches, he's still making drones too, which means his roach attack would be very weak overall, as long as I'm playing efficiently. And then it's because he's making drones in the third now, I make the rest of my gases into drones. Or, I'm sorry, the rest of my drones into gases, I make another round, and I do it. I finish off my economy, and now I'm sitting here on like 66 drones, and my opponent's on like 48 or like 50. Because he's stifling his drone production so hard because he keeps making roaches with it. Because he's so paranoid about, I could die, I don't know. And then once I hit that good saturation, because I keep scouting, he's making drones to a degree. Now at that stage, I can just make mass roaches and just win the game. Because once you get to that stage where you are at 3 base full saturation, that's like you won the game on economy, and now you can make roaches. And it turns into a race of who can max faster, and remax, and then remax, and remax. I'm talking a lot, but the big point I'm trying to make here that's very, very, very relevant and very important is whoever gets to full saturation 3 base is going to win the game if it turns into a macro game every time. Because if my opponent is macroing like shit, basically, and I'm macroing efficiently, I will always have overwhelming supply advantages, And you can see right now, you still have a 30 supply lead over your opponent, even though you both played somewhat paranoid. I think you played definitely better, but you both played a little paranoid. Because you are both over making units when you don't need them. But now that you're making 16 roaches, that's perfect. You should be making nothing but roaches all game now. And your opponent is actually undersaturated, and he's going full unit production as well, which means he's never going to have enough bank to match you when you trade. So let's just say you're 200 supply, and he's 180. You guys smash into each other. You lose 80 supply, he loses 80 supply. So now you're 120, he's only 100. You could remake up to 200, and he could remake up to 150. Because he doesn't have as much money as you do. He'll never be able to remax like you can. Then now the next time you guys fight, you have a 50 supply lead instead of a 20 supply lead. And you just win the game. Something like that. Like, that's very, very realistic. And that's why getting to the 66 drone saturation is so important faster. Because you can max over and over and over and over and over off of Roach Ravager, which is what you're doing. Which is perfect. I'm glad you're going Roach Ravager. That's great. Notice how you keep having supply leads? Like, that, honestly, that fight too was not even good for you. That was a bad concave for you, but you still won the fight because you just had more supply. And because of that as well, you also have more units, more supply overall. Like, the more supply means in a fight, even if it's a little inefficient, it means you're going to have more supply afterwards because you're trading more efficiently because you have more DPS there. And then he does a Ling run by. He kills your drones. This is now a moment where I would say you need to really rebuild your drones and get back to that 66 amount. Because now if you stay at 56 all game, you're kind of falling in the same boat that he is, where you're going to have kind of inefficiencies and now your remaxes. Okay. And yeah. So fixing your drone count is always priority number one. It's huge because you just lost your whole army, which is okay. I'm not saying that that's the worst thing in the world. You killed his third while you did that, which is nice. But the more drones you have up to that optimal saturation point in ZvZ, and 66 drones if you're going to play a Roach style in ZvZ is nice. Again, we're not talking about Bronze or GM style anymore because you're in Diamond. We're talking about legit builds now for like higher level play. And 66 drones to like 66 to like 70 is like fucking great economy in ZvZ because it allows you to have enough to remax off of Roach styles over and over and over. As soon as you were going to start going into Hydra Lurker, you could have droned up to, then you could drone up to like 80, but this is after you've already maxed on Roaches. And there's a high chance you're going to win most of your games if you max efficiently the first time. But now that you're going Lurkers, you could go up to like 80, but if you still stay around 70, that's still okay. But against like Ultras now, the best way to play against this is you could just keep making Lurkers. I love that you're making Lurkers already. That's great. But you could just keep making more Lurkers and wait to fight him until you have seriously like 14 Lurkers or 16 Lurkers. And right now you have 5 where none of them are in the fight with you yet. But I would say regrouping your army and then play defensive until you max out again and then attack him again. Because there's nothing he can do. Like, what can he do if you play defensively on Lurkers when he goes Ultras? He'll just run into you and die. So the only chance you're going to give him to win the game here is if you keep running across the map in little tiny staggered armies, and then he just keeps running little bits of your army over again and again and again and again. Kind of like what just happened there a little bit. But now you have the Lurker Hydra set up at your base, which is perfect. So now if you just sit here defensively, and I love that you're making drones again. It's what I wanted you to do. I really wanted you to do that. So now your drone count's back up to 64. And I love that you're making drones again. This is fucking great. Yo. Congratulations. Well, this is the perfect. It's late as fuck, but you're doing it. I like that you're doing it. So now droning up to almost... You're in the 73 range now. That's fucking great. That's so good because now you're making more... Now that you have the tech and you did it safely because you went into Roach Ravager first, you now have more expensive things than Roach Ravager, because Hydra Lurker is way more expensive than Roach Ravager. It would not be the worst idea to make more drones for that, which is what you did. And even if you make another round of drones, I'm going to say that's fine. Going up to 80 now would be okay. Or, again, staying at 70 is fine. And you made one more round of drones. This is the last round of drones I would say you should make at this stage now. This is fine. This is good. But now stop. Because if you keep going, this is going to become overkill. 80 is a good amount here. And now we can see the Ultra dude, he's attacking you with Ultra Queen. And watch how shitty Ultra Queen is against Lurker. It's just going to be a joke. And yeah. And now
It was a joke, yeah.
Yeah, you've stabilized now defensively, which is what I wanted you to do. What I wanted you to do as well was play defensive against this. It's the best way to do it. And then I would have said still play defensive until you max out, unless what just happened, which is your opponent throws an army away, and then you're like, oh well, that's room for me to now counterattack you because you just threw your army away. So the fact that you're going to attack him now is totally fine. It's a good move to do because he just threw his army away. But yeah, up to the Lurker point, when you kind of like ran Hydras across the map and died into the Ultras for a little bit more excessively than you should, that was not good. But other than that, the fact that you played defensively on Lurker Hydra while droning to 80, that was perfect. That is exactly what you should have done. That was round of applause for that one. That was good shit. That was high level play right there. But yeah, now you could just go off of a good economy. You can always remax, and just keep putting the pressure on him all day. He'll never be able to keep up with you because his economy is complete crap compared to yours. I would say the only way to do what you're already doing better would be maybe throw down like 2 spine crawlers per mineral line or something like that, just in case he does like a Zergling run by again. That way you're not going to just have a potential chance to lose like 30 or 40 drones because he sends like 12 links to a mineral line each or something like that. So like 1 or 2 spines per mineral line would be like, oh, if he does Ling run by again, we're fine. My spines not only will buy time for me to get units there and also potentially run the drones away, but the spines also might just straight up kill all the Lings that attack it. And it would be a super simple investment where you could replace those drones after you build the spines. Just make another round of like 10 drones. And then now every one of your bases is protected from Ling run bys really well. Otherwise, really good at this stage. Also, I like that you're not sending your whole army back. I like that you're still killing him at the same time. And I don't know if you do this, but here's a tip. A really, really good tip on how to do something like this really easily and really effectively. As soon as you're going to send your army back home, one thing you can do if you're not already doing it, and if you're like, okay, I want to send our units back home, but I also want to attack them at the same time, just green box a chunk of your army, whatever you think it sounds good to you to keep attacking his base with, and hit Alt a different number. Like Alt 2, Alt 3, Alt 4, anything that's open. And then say 1, go back to my base and defend. That way, and then you could be like, whatever Alt number you chose, let's say it's Alt 2, okay? You green boxed out like 8 Roaches and like 3 Hydras or something and hit Alt 2. And then you A-move his main base with that. And then you could even like A-move and like shift A-move it like in a circle to like make sure your Hydras and Roaches like fully clear the base out, where they're going to like run in a circle around the base and kill all the tech. Like you don't have to actually click the buildings, just A-move the ground in like 3 points where it's like go to top right, go to top left, and then go to bottom left. So that they do a circle around his base. And then you just forget about it. You literally never look at it again. And you focus all of your attention on defending your base. And then what happens is your units that you now attack him with are going to do a lap around his base and kill all of his tech, all of his drones, a lot of his overlords, if he's not actually actively defending his base at the same time too. Which he's definitely not. And then it only takes you like 2 seconds to set that up. All right. Yeah. So early game development in ZvZ, huge, massive, very, very, very important. Huge, 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 huge. Yeah. I do think your overall gameplay is good. I think you have the right idea. The fundamental core concept of ZvZ for you is actually there. I think the fact that you're going into economy with roaches and ravagers, then into tech with a better economy and higher tech powerful units. The only thing that's missing from it, I think you need static D at this stage. But the build up definitely was a lot of it was out of order. Like your droning phase is definitely seeking improvement, I would say. And a lot of that again comes from you just have to be more active with scouts. It's all it comes down to. Proper reactions to your opponent, because blind paranoid reactions are always going to make you max slower, which is how everybody plays at lower tiers. Even in like masters, people still play like that. Even in GM, people still play like that. I'm not even kidding. Some do. You have to be active with scouting, which is why I know it's not an easy thing to say. It's way easier said than done, but it's something that I think you should start practicing right now. And what you should always look for when you scout is look at his economy compared to your economy and go, oh, okay, we're about tied. I can make drones. If you're not already at your ideal drone count, or you say, okay, I'm already way ahead. I need to make units and I need to find out what I want to make based off of what he's making. If he's making roaches, you should probably make roaches. If he's doing a really early Ling flood, you can get away with Ling Bane before you have a Roach Warren. And if he's doing a really early aggressive all-in Roach timing and you don't yet have a Roach Warren, that is the exception now to where you should probably make Spine Crawlers. And we're talking like maybe make like 3 or 4 of them. But yeah, any questions?
Actually, no. My most problematic part of the game is the early stage. Afterwards, I usually win.
Yeah.
Of course, if the opponent is if the game is well balanced, I usually win in the late game because I macro better, I guess.
Yeah.
But the early stage was very difficult for me, and you explained it quite a lot. Actually, the session is now 1 hour and a half, so
Yeah.
I will be very thankful if you send me a PayPal address to support you further,
Oh, it's okay.
because that was really informative and I learned a lot. I've written down like 50 things, I believe.
Okay, sounds good, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can say, you don't have to. I can send you something, but just know I do not expect it. You do not have to do that. For the extra half hour, it's totally fine.
I insist, so
Okay.
write it down,
All right, man.
please.
I appreciate it. Thank you, dude.
Okay.
But yeah, I definitely can see your later stages of the game. You definitely did things a lot more efficiently, faster, and effective there. The thing about early game ZvZ is it is very fucking complicated if you really break it down, which is why, the last thing I'll say was, a lot of people that were saying, or when I said a lot of people don't actually play correctly and like even possibly in like GM because they just do fucking random shit. That's why I don't know if you've ever heard people talk about the game like this, but a lot of people actually describe mirror matches, especially like ZvZ, as like a coin flip. They're like, oh yeah, it's just fucking stupid. Like it's like literally like rock paper scissors. You just do the wrong thing and you die. Those are people who don't scout, generally speaking. They don't scout enough. So it is and there's literally, I would say the only person in the world who scouts enough in ZvZ is probably like Cyril. Like that dude is like always fucking scouting repeatedly all the time. Most people don't. They just, there's always some stage of the game, even myself included. I'm like, fuck it. I'm just going to make drones right now. Hopefully we're fine. But yeah, like, just try to be more efficient about getting to that 3-base saturation, and your games are going to have so much more success. And try to scout a little bit more with like a speedling here and there, 2 speedlings here and there, so that you can get a read on what's happening and not just die. And yeah, that's it. That's going to help you so much if you start practicing that.
We'll try.
All right, man. Well, Again, I'll send you this VOD, so everything we talked about, you can watch it again. Definitely one of the big things that's really hard to remember. I don't expect you at all to remember anything about what I said in the very first stage of like the all-in defense. But if you start actually watching this again and again and again and committing those things to memory, especially through experience from games that you'll execute it in, that's going to help your early games so fucking much against all-in Zergs. That 2-minute rule is so huge, and 16 hatch is so huge against making it really easy for you to defend timings. And yeah, I wish you the best of luck, dude. Thank you for doing another lesson, and yeah, man.
You too, man. You too, man. That's great. All the stuff you're doing is just great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dude. I'll see you again next time, and until then, take it easy. Good luck, and much love, man.
And you too. Stay safe, man.
All right, see you, dude. All right, okay. Guys, that has been another coaching lesson. This is ZvZ. There was definitely a lot of strategic analysis here. There was a little bit of emphasis on macro because it is relevant, but it was mostly like how to react to shit, strategic choices, and basically proper ways to play a higher level ZvZ, which is probably what I'm going to call this video when I upload it later. But thank you guys for watching. I will see you all in the next one. Much love, guys. Take it easy. Good luck in your own games. And, yeah, good luck. Peace.